Greetings, bloggers, vloggers, followers, and podders. Dustin here from Dustin's Dynasty with another edition of the weekly vlog. Welcome today. It's been an exciting week. Well, I shouldn't say exciting, but very eventful. And what brought us to our next topic for the vlog this week is being a concrete thinker. Being autistic, I've always been a concrete thinker. I think a lot of times as an adult, I have hid the fact of shying away from it. I've always kind of hid it or made it take a back seat and never really accepted the fact that I was a concrete thinker. But this week, I kind of ran into a situation where it kind of brought it to light that I was a concrete thinker. So today we're going to share this week's experience and maybe draw on some past ones to maybe explain how I can see how I am a concrete thinker, and how we can advocate as an autistic person and as an autism community to better advocate for understanding of the medical systems and all systems to be aware of this. So my situation this week comes to the fact that, I was just a person who needed some routine blood work earlier this week. I went and had that completed earlier this week on Monday. Normally I just went like I normally did, had it completed. That evening, I had a phone call from the emergency department of my respective health system saying that they received a critical alert on a level, and that level was extremely high, and that it could possibly could be deadly and result in death. Unfortunately, for telling somebody who is an autistic person and thinks literal and is a concrete thinker, that is not the thing that you want to hear as an autistic person. You automatically have that thought in your head. You are looping on that head. You were being repetitive. Thankfully, I was with my parents at the time. The thought kept repeating. It was my parents who calmed me down and advocated. However, throughout this call with this emergency room physician, I was able to advocate for myself to say that I would not take the route of going with these emergency medications that I would later discover that if I would have taken them, I would have been gravely ill. So in the process of processing this tragic phone call, or very phone call that delivered really literal and very concrete information, it did take a while for me to calm down to a point where I could come back to my own residence. And again, I needed to reach out for support, and which I did and received. But it brought up other instances where this occurred. Such as being told, when you're taking your driver's exam, that you can't see out of your left eye. It was not that I couldn't see out of my left eye. It was just the fact that the equipment made it impossible to see out of the left eye, and that is just how sometimes it happens with that equipment, and that I was selected for further testing. It happens, but at that point, in that other instance, it was made to the fact that I automatically believed that I could not see in my left eye, which in fact I knew I could because I had just previously had my eyes examined not too long before that. So, once I got that paperwork processed and went to a completely different testing center for that issue, which is a completely separate issue than the current issue, that was able to be addressed, and I did successful. Moving back to the current issue, so I immediately followed up again, while this was what was thought as a serious and critical issue, at that moment, I knew the only thing that I could do was take my medicine, of course, and go to bed. And that I did. And, it seemed to be, I slept on it, basically, and woke up the next morning. The next morning, before I even got in the door at work, my doctor's office called, said, the same thing. They had received a critical alert, and simply they were not as concerned. They just wanted to order some lab work. And so anyway, I told them I could not do it that day. I was already at work, and that was one town over, and I would go the next morning and have that completed. I would move my schedule around to accommodate them. They said no problem. That would be it would be okay. So I move along. Go along my business. I work, and then I'm just okay, and nothing's wrong. And the signs that the emergency room physician said to look out for never occurred. The next day, which is, and we're talking 48 hours into this, well, over 24 to 36 hours into this, I get labs drawn again. They, of course, the doctor, and then the doctor puts a priority on it to get it done. In the meantime, my mother and my father had an appointment with the same doctor that I had, ordered the blood work. They being the advocate mama bear and papa bear that they are, they advocated saying how I reacted to the situation when the emergency room called. They said, how there needs to be, some sort of dialogue box and some sort of alert box when somebody has a communication challenge or a communication barrier, or may take things a little differently than, or may need some sensitive care than, say, the normal person and the neurotypical person, or just any person, that differs from in a varying format than the standard way of care that they need. There needs to be some sort of dialogue box in some sort of way in there. And while they understood that and they accepted that and they saw that, later that day, my blood work did come back fine. It was a fluke. They discovered that it was in the way that it was tested, and the primary care doctor, did call me on the phone and give me a sincere apology for the way that it was handled, and I did accept their apology. But again, there needs to be more advocacy, in this arena of, in the medical field, in the mental health field, and across all systems, of alerting people, especially when you're communicating to people through a way that may not be as clear and concise to them. Whether it's autism, whatever it is, there needs to be a better way to communicate to that person making that phone call. And it doesn't have to be just a doctor. It doesn't have to be a nurse. It can be anybody. Everybody has access to certain levels of certain things. Computers are very magical on how they can write their language. And so it's just something as simple as a dialogue box that could possibly come up and say, hey, this person may take things literally. This person may need sensitive words. This person may need whatever that may be, to have that information better relayed to them, so that they do not result in a more traumatizing, drastic outcome than what you're already doing to them. You're already telling them these, but these words that that you're using, that is very sensitive and it's a very sensitive nature. And while that those words that you're not being considerate or not have a bedside manner towards, that doesn't make the person better. That doesn't answer the person's questions. That doesn't answer how they're going to get through it at ease. It's going to cause them, especially at 7 o'clock at night, it's going to cause them increased anxiety, increased just increased everything. And then they're going to over worry, they're going to get they're going to obsess, they're going to ruminate, all these things, and it's going to be very challenging for them. But if you put that little dialogue box in there, similar to a yellow dot alert, and I have that information on the website what a yellow dot is, but similar to that, to say, hey, maybe this person has a special need, maybe they need to be told things differently than the average person, and maybe include some ways that you can communicate with them. It'd be similar to something like a RAP plan or something like that. These things need to be more transparent, and like I said, it's not just among the higher ranks of the systems. It's everybody who has access to somebody's contact information. It is 2023. We have made many strides in technology to where we can have this information readily available. we must do better, people. We must have a way to communicate our needs as, however we need to be communicated in a better way that is better for us, better made for us to understand. So, I think that's the thing with concrete thinking is that needs to be, better handled and understood, that, that we think differently. And so that needs to be documented. But that's one thing. But I mean, concrete thinking, I've just, I've thought about it over the many years, and, it's just part of life. Sorry, I had to take a drink there. But, I've always been a concrete thinker. It's the words that are told to me, and I run to town with them, and I believe them. And it can be hard to persuade me any different or see a different opinion, because that is the opinion that I believe, and that is what I'm going to run to town with. And until I am told something by a more valuable authority, that is just how it's going to be. For a long time, I believed that there were pests in a public bus, and for a long time, I did not ride a public bus, and I still today struggle with that years later. The bus comes right by my house, and it goes right to the stores that I could find very resourceful and could use the bus maybe a few times a week, but I still will not ride it. It still has anxiety. It's still trauma. So from that concrete thinking of being told one thing 3 or 4 years ago, and it seems weird being 3 years ago, but it is true. You think of that. You think of what you're told, and you take it at the face value that it is worth, and that is the way you concretely think about it. It is the way that you cannot change it. You cannot make it any different. So, I think that's the thing, like with concrete thinking is, we must do better at being prepared for the communities that are connecting to these individuals, whether they be neurodivergent or neurotypical. Anybody who has a challenge, there needs to be better ways to communicate to sensitive needs, regardless of, the concrete communication or not. But as far as concrete communication, the best thing to do is just explain things in a better situation, and, not make it aware that, it's explain things better, so that, this may or may not be, but in my mind as an autistic person, that is how I believe it, and I cannot get that out of my head. And sometimes that loops and loops and loops, and it could be very very depressing and very down Debbie, and very hard to get out of sometimes. Sometimes I can get into them obsessive loops, and it's just very, 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 very strong, and it can be very wrong. So with that being said, I just want to share my experience with concrete thinking. I did explain about the other situation, but that's just one of a few situations that I've had. But now, when you're told something, don't always believe it for face value. Value what you believe and value what you see, because sometimes it's hard to see that. But for me, I'm starting to slowly see that I need to value what I believe and not what I'm automatically told at face value. So with that being said, I want to thank you for listening. Be sure to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest at Dustin's Dynasty, on the web at dustinsdynastyusa.com, at Dustin's Dynasty ASD. Please be sure to give a like and subscribe to this video, and we'll catch you soon. Bye for now.